Hello, my name's John. This is a large Warhammer base, and you're watching Wargames Models and Other Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be starting a slow project, and what I mean by that, it's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, and I've got a few bits and pieces together, and I'm going to do it bit by bit over the coming months. So if you're interested in this project as it goes on and you want to make any comments about suggestions on the way I can make things, yeah, put it down below. So the first thing that I want to do is make a large scenic base. So I've got one of the large Warhammer bases, and what I've also got just here is a 3D printed Warlord Titan head. Now, I found this on Cults 3D. I'll leave a link in the description to the creators page who put it together. I have added a few of my own details. I've put a different neck on there and a little hatchway in the back of the neck to get into the cockpit, so you can see it a little bit clearer. I did print it in FDM as well, just to see how it would come out, and then I made some of the adaptations that I wanted for this resin print. So as you'll see looking at it, there are a few little spots of layer details on there, and I'm not going to spend too much time at all cleaning them up. If anything, I'm just going to disguise them with some technical paints, as this is going to be a Warlord Titan that has been in situ for many years, so I'm thinking about doing lots of weathering, rust, all that kind of stuff. What I'm also thinking about including, because I've never used them before, is some of the Citadel creeping vines, which are quite bendy, and I haven't really used the bendy plastic from Warhammer before, and I thought it'd be quite a nice little project to play around with. But what I'm going to do in this video is stick this down and then add the technical paint to hide some of the other details, and then get the whole thing primed again, ready to start with painting and details and things like that. So to start with, I'm going to glue this down. You'll see inside there's still a little bit of support material that I didn't bother taking out, but that's okay. I'm going to put super glue around on the bottom and then position it on this base. If I was using the FDM print, I'd use a plastic glue to stick it down, but as this is a resin print, I'm not really worried about that, as that glue won't work. Want to make sure I've got plenty of contact points, as I don't want it falling off ever, and with that amount of super glue it's not going to go anywhere. So I have an idea of where I want this to sit. So let's make sure I line it up how I want it, and then it's going to be a push and hold. Okay, so what I'm going to do for a while is I'm going to hold this in position, and then we'll come back when it's all dry. Okay, so I've stuck this down, and while it was drying, because it took a little bit of time because there were quite a few gaps in there, super glue always likes a nice flat surface to kind of really glue to, but because I didn't sand the bottom that much, there were gaps, so it took a little bit of time for it to kick in. I had to add a little bit of glue to this corner to hold it down. What I'm going to do, before I do any of the texture paint, I've decided I'm going to fill this gap with green stuff, and then any other little gaps around the place. So I've started mixing some up, so let's finish mixing it, and then I'm going to put it along that edge just to kind of blend it slightly. Nothing major, but just a little bit. So just going to roll that out slightly. And then let's get a sculpting tool. I'll get this little spoon one. And let's put that along there. And like my other videos, this is real time, but slightly different because I'm stopping between each stages. So lets the glue dry, I'll let the green stuff dry. But what I will do with this stage is once I've got the green stuff all done, I'm going to give it a prime. And I'm going to stick with a black primer before I do the technical paint. And the reason why I'm going to prime it straight away is the green stuff is a chemical reaction. So it doesn't matter if it's got paint on it, it'll still go off. So I'm not too worried about that being painted over. But I'm just going to roughly fill the gap first. I've probably mixed a little bit too much green stuff, but that doesn't matter because I can use it elsewhere on this model. But yeah, this base, I've kind of had an idea for a project, like I said, and it's going to be a long-term project as I slowly get the bits I need. But everything has to start somewhere, and as I already have so many projects on the go, I thought I might as well have another one. So that's pushed in there. And then I'm just gonna force this along. There we go. Might have to fill a few other little bits where it's pulled up, but that's okay. Run my finger along it a little bit as well. Right, let's fill a few of those little gaps created when it dragged the green stuff. Okay. Now, like I said, in this video I'm going to put some technical paint on this to get some textures in certain places, but if you'd like to have me record another video on the whole process of painting this, please drop it in the comments. It won't be for a little while, but if lots of people want me to do it, I'll do it sooner rather than later. Right. Okay, that's filled that bit nicely. I'm now left with this lump here. So what I'm going to do, looking around this, I'm going to put some there. Let's put some down here. But yeah, it's 3D printing isn't something I normally do in my hobby, but I'm starting to do little bits here and there. Reason why I don't tend to do it in my hobby is because I do a lot of 3D printing at work, and kind of I like to get away from it, to be honest. But when it comes to having ideas that if I was to buy a Wall or Titan head, it would cost ridiculous amounts of money, so I'm kind of quite happy to find ideal models for 3D printing, adapt them where needed and that kind of thing. And this does have, I don't know if I can see it on camera, a few layer lines quite visible on these rocks and the head there. I'm going to cover that with the texture paint, but let's now just grab another tool and just going to push this in place. And I'm stippling it slightly. It's not really necessary to do this, but it'll give a little bit of more texture, a little bit more texture. And I don't have to necessarily put texture paint on this bit where the green stuff is. I can just leave it as is, but it works quite nicely blending certain bits together. Don't know what kind of texture this would be, I've got no reference at the moment, so I'm just kind of creating a slightly different texture than the surrounding area. So yeah, as well as the vines that I'm thinking about putting on this, I do somewhere have some citadel trees, and I might use one of those, or parts of one of those, in this final base. I mean, my plan is to get this actually completely finished before moving on to the model that's going to sit on it. The reason why I'm going for this whole base is because it's going to make the model slightly larger, so it can be a stand-in for something else if it's ever used in a game or whatever. Might do a video soon on the early stages of that model, but okay. So that is the green stuff in place. What I'm going to do now is prime all of this black so the base gets a coat of primer as well. Okay, so I've now primed the whole base. Doesn't look much different, but it means that paint's going to stick to it a lot better. What I'm going to do now is use some Stirland mud just to create some areas that will become slightly more textured and so on. And to do that, I'm going to use one of these texture tools to apply it. I think I'm going to start with the bigger one. And all I'm going to do, let's bring this up on here, is I'm just going to start putting that like that. But what I want to do is bring it up the edge of this Titan's head slightly. So I probably will add more of the technical paint, the texture paint, when I come to actually painting this fully, but I just want to add it in specific areas around the model so it'll dry and add a little bit of extra detail and so on. So I'll start with the bigger areas like this. I'm really risking it as I move it with it still on here, but that's okay. There we go. And I'm kind of using it almost like a filler around all the base of the head. And like I said, I'll add more to different areas. Just going to clean that end off a bit, and I'm going to use the smaller end now, and I'm going to build up a little bit of texture actually on the head itself. So where those layer points are, so the layer lines, I'm just going to bring a little bit of texture up. So this will translate across when I do the painting as dirt, rust, whatever. But what I will do, once all of this is on, I'm going to let it dry naturally. I'm not going to force dry it with a hairdryer or anything like that. Just going to put a few little bits in place here. That's working. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And what I'm going to do is put a big block there, but kind of start trying to connect it together like that. So it looks like kind of fallen dirt and so on. So it's like the head's ploughed into the ground. Yeah, it's a good model, this one. As I said, it's 3D printing comes into its own with stuff like this. I would no way be able to afford an actual Titan head to do this to. If I was going to get a Titan head, I'd be wanting to get a whole Titan and making that, but in this case this is all right, having and where that green stuff was, there's going to be some of that on the edge of it as well. Okay, this is kind of seeing my vision appear while I do this. And I'm going to want to put some under here like this. It needs to be in a few places on the front so this doesn't look too out of place. And I'll run some around the sides as well. So let's move around to this side and put a little bit on to build it up. So I mean, a lot of this is probably going to get covered with the model when I decide exactly how it's going to get attached, and also if and when I use the vines, that's going to cover lots of pieces as well. Let's get quite a lump to go here. There we go. So I'm covering up some of the 3D printed detail of the rocks that it's kind of churned up and landed on, but I don't mind that, as I want to try and get that texture build up around the model slightly. Okay, let's get a bit more under that. And also, I don't have to be too careful doing this. I can kind of knock it around quite a bit. I'm going to leave that there with space there just in case I come up with an idea of something that might go there, but let's carry on putting a bit more of this dotted around some of the sides. Run that down, there we go. I obviously want to still keep it very recognisable, so I might get to the point where I finish using this now. Okay, so that's that one done. Let's randomly clean this up by putting a little bit of texture here and there. There we go. Right, let's clean that off, and then I'm going to apply in a few places a little bit of the modern earth, which is one of the finishes that crackles, I think, from the best that I remember. So let's just splat some of it down there, and I don't mind if I mix these up slightly. Because a lot of these are going to get painted over anyway. But just adding a little bit of early texture to this model before I even get to that painting stage. Also, we'll see if this modern earth is actually working how I want it to be. If it isn't, doesn't matter too much. I can always put another texture over the top. I haven't actually used this pot for a long time, so it might have kind of gone off slightly, I don't know. We'll see. I'm babbling a little bit now, so apologies. Let's put a little bit on here. Just a little bit there. That's good. A little bit just down here. Hope this is on camera. Let's get to a point where I can't really hold it anywhere, but that's okay. Put a little bit on the side there, we'll see how that goes. Okay. Right, I'm going to let all this texture paint dry, and then we'll come back and have a look at how it's gone so far. Okay, so I've been letting it dry, and you can see that there's crackling from the modern earth, which is just what I wanted. I applied it on these sections here, just on the head, so it looks like paint crackle and that kind of thing when I get to paint it also down on here as well. So what I want to do now is give this a light dusting of a white primer. So I'm going to use some white Scar. Not a heavy coat, because I still want to have some of the black undercoat underneath, but I'm just going to hit it from one angle just to get a colour over the top of it. So I'll go and do that, and then we'll have a look at how this is looking. Okay, there we have it. There is the first stages of this scenic base. Really happy with how it's turned out so far. I always prefer to paint onto a white primer anyway, but with the kind of the dark areas, it's going to add a little bit of contrast and things to however I decide to paint it. But yeah, if you've got any comments, please drop it down below. If you've got an idea of which legion this Titan would have belonged to, yeah, drop it in the comments as well. I'm going to go and do some research about how I want to paint this up. In a future video, I'll probably have a look at the creeping vines. The perfect thing about this is they can kind of slot in somewhere and then come around over the top. That's the idea down the line, so that'll be a later video though. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this starting a scenic base video. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name's John, and you've been watching War Games, Models, and Other Hobbies.